Hey, welcome everyone to another episode of Beyond the Case, which is a podcast where global leaders from Harvard Business School's OPM community join in a personal capacity and they share the real lessons, life principles, and mental models that go behind building enduring companies. My guest today is Saleema Vellani. She recently finished Unit 3 at the OPM program at Harvard Business School. So, congratulations, Saleema, on being part of the HBS alumni network now.
Thank you so much, Sohan. I'm really excited to be part of the alumni community and to contribute to your show.
Yeah. Salima, do you just want to introduce yourself and your business for the listeners?
Sure. So my name is Saleema Vellani. I am based in Washington, D.C., originally from Toronto, Canada. I've lived around the world in the Dominican Republic, Mexico, Brazil, Italy, and have traveled to over 100 countries, speak 5 languages. Yeah, I've been an entrepreneur pretty much since the age of 21, since I lived in Brazil and co-founded my first business at the time, moved to Italy, started a translation business. So for me, entrepreneurship was very much, it was really a process of reinvention, but it was almost accidental or spontaneous. It wasn't what I had planned. And so I'm excited to dive more into that. But essentially, what my current business does now is it's called Ripple Impact. And we're helping a lot of mid-sized company CEOs become recognized industry leaders, recognized trusted authorities in their industries so that they can scale their companies or plan for an exit or some sort of inflection point, whether they're trying to uh, you know, think about what's next in their next chapter, take the company to the next level. And they're at some sort of inflection point and they know that they're ready to be recognized and they need to be known and stand out in the market as the public voice of the company that's shaping the industry. So that's what I do today. And I've had different businesses across similar areas of marketing, translation, advertising. And this is what I do today, which is really my purpose. This is what I love doing.
Incredible. When you say you help small and mid-sized entrepreneurs identify the next chapter, does that include PR, marketing, financing, or all of that? Could you could you share a little more?
Yeah, sure. So think of us as a combination, a team of experts between marketing, PR, branding, positioning, vision clarity. So we're basically starting with vision clarity, of course, is like, where are you going? Because CEOs, of course, as visionaries, as founders, it's like, where are we going? It's like the thing that we love is actually when we feel really clear. We have those breakthroughs and insights. And so we're helping them get really clear on where they're going as a CEO, but also where's the company going and how do we communicate that to the market? Since a lot of times we build up our networks and we work so hard on our companies, but who's the one that drives the biggest deals? It's the CEO, right? Who's the one who is the chief sales officer? Who's the one that shakes the hands with the top client accounts? It's the CEO. And so ultimately, especially at the upper small to mid size, the CEO is still playing a very important role in driving the growth of the company. But as we learned actually Professor Daz talked about, that it's really, really important to strategically position the company, but also the CEO is the voice and the face of the company. In a market like today where trust is the most important business currency, it's the CEO that needs to double down on becoming that trusted voice for the company and in the industry. So yeah, to answer your question, it's a combination of all those different things in a one-stop shop since our market is very fragmented and we realized there was a big hole, a big pain point that there's a lot of fragmented providers focusing on, hey, I'm going to grow your LinkedIn. I'm going to help you with PR. I'm going to help you with building a brand. I'm going to help you with speaking and I'm going to help you get into the media. I'll help you get on podcasts. But it wasn't really generating results for the CEOs of these businesses. And they were like, something's missing. And they just didn't have a team that would bring it all together and help them with the clarity, the strategy, and the execution to get to where they wanted.
Amazing. Talk to us about your early childhood years. What were they like? What did you think about the world around you? Did you always aspire to be an entrepreneur? What is the mindset like?
Yeah. I didn't really aspire. I didn't really think about entrepreneurship. It wasn't really even really available as an option. But reflecting back, my mom was an entrepreneur. She never called herself an entrepreneur. She had a business. She was a Montessori teacher and started her own business at home. She had a school at home where I grew up and it was just outside of Toronto and she was doing really well. She was supposed to have like 5 students. She had like 13 students at a time sometimes and all, preschool, pre-K. And it was like her dream. It was her purpose. She loved teaching. Her name was Miss Tess as a teacher. Her name was actually Mumtaz. But anyway, so she was my inspiration, and I actually lost my mom at the age of, when I was 16, I turned 16, she passed away from cancer. And so for me, it was very much subconsciously part of my legacy to, her legacy was for, she wanted us to start a school together. And I was like, I don't want to, I didn't have that much patience for kids. I was like, I don't want to start a school in a venue in a local place. And I didn't have that same dream. But what I did take from her dream and legacy was the curiosity to help people grow, to help people connect more to themselves and the world around them, to help people really unleash their best selves, which is what she did. So in a way, I'm extending what she did to, of course, grown-ups and CEOs, very different. But yeah, that's a bit about my childhood. So I lost my mom. I grew up just outside Toronto. I have a brother who is 14. He's 14 years older than me, but lived most of his life in Asia. So, and my dad is still alive and well, who lives here in Virginia. So for me, it was really a lot of feeling abandoned, I would say, even though, of course, I mean, I was young and those are the feelings I had, or rejected sometimes. Socially, I was not, I wasn't part of those popular groups, or I was a nerd. I wasn't a geek, but I was a nerd, and I really just loved to be the teacher's pet and get good grades. And if I had a 99, that was not good enough. My dad's like, nope, you can do better. So typical, my parents come from East Africa, and my grandfathers come from India, Gujarat. So we're coming from a very entrepreneurial, nomadic community that is very familiar with reinventing ourselves, and a very close knit community actually as well spiritually. So but yeah, it's I grew up with that community, and those values of entrepreneurship were instilled in me, even though I didn't realize until I lost my mom and started going out on my own into the world and starting things by accident.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. It seems you've never found a spot of comfort through your growing years as well, right? And so you've always maybe felt displaced or the challenge to reinvent yourself, like you said. Do you think that has in some way made you comfortable with discomfort, which is so important to be an entrepreneur today, right? That's the biggest skill that every entrepreneur needs, to stay focused and not lose perspective when the whole world is on fire and you're right in the middle of the fire. Do you think somewhere your formative years prepared you for that in hindsight?
But totally, yes, that's a story of, I'm very much a trauma driven entrepreneur, where like that trauma and that constant feeling like I'm not enough, or I need to do more, I need to go higher. 99 is not enough of a grade to I need to achieve more. And it's had its downsides. It's definitely also hurt me in many ways. But overall, the net has been, yes, it's led to a lot of my career success. I've done a lot of things in my career, right? That I didn't even talk about yet, that, from hydroponics and the Middle East for refugees to all kinds of different things I've done in the international development space in my previous career. And it requires a lot of resilience to do that kind of work, to really go and help countries and communities reinvent themselves, to help people and companies go to the next level. And it requires a lot of resilience, that resilience, in my opinion, comes from feeling rejected, feeling that, you have to get to that next step, or you have to get to that next level. It fuels that drive, those feelings of abandonment and rejection from childhood, which I think are very important to work on. Like I work with, I have a self-care team of therapy, I have, coaches, I have different support and tools and mechanisms to work on those things. However, I think it's about balancing, of course, like it can actually help us in some ways to have that drive. There's something that's wired in us, especially entrepreneurs like myself that have experienced trauma, which is a lot of us, that drives us. There's something beautiful about that as well, that keeps us wanting to wake up each day and work on our missions.
Very well said. And you've traveled over 100 countries. You mentioned you've worked with governments, etc. Could you talk a little bit about your travels, how that shaped your view of the world, different personalities that you interact with, and how that plays into the different individuals that you either coach or conduct business with today?
Yeah, thank you. So I started my career out in international development. I had a master's degree in international economics from Johns Hopkins. My dream was to work for the World Bank. Did I check the box? Yes. I've worked, 15 plus years between different economic development banks, international development banks like the World Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank. So definitely worked a lot at the government level, definitely worked with lots of heads of state, prime ministers, presidents, ministries. And my goal was to work at the macro level. I said, hey, if I can get the level of education and work at institutions where I can make a difference at the macro level, that's going to have a massive impact on the world. However, what I felt was, to be very honest, I felt very far from the impact when I worked at these institutions. Nothing against them, but they just were not the right place for me because I had a lot of creativity and drive and ideas and innovative. There's lots of things I wanted to bring, but it was constantly being shut down, and not in a way that I felt rejected. That in a good way, it was like I really couldn't do much there. I tried to bring ideas, and some people would value them, and then they would be shut down or not be sustainable. So I said, you know what? Maybe it's not about working at this macro level because of all the bureaucracy, because that's going to affect how I feel. And I was like, I want to feel excited to wake up every day. And I really missed being an entrepreneur when I was finally made those dreams come true. I realized they were not really what made me happy. And so I went back into entrepreneurship. Again, I had a whole career prior to going into these institutions. I had a few years where I was an entrepreneur, but I didn't call myself an entrepreneur, right? Before I even did grad school, I had already co-founded Brazil's top language school, which is called Caminhos Languages in Rio de Janeiro. It was a nonprofit idea at the time to fund the orphanage, finance an orphanage. It's very successful. It's still the number one. It's still in Ipanema. I then started a translation business in Italy because I was rejected. I was on the streets of Italy walking around with my resume because that's what I was taught. Walk around with your resume, knock on doors. And I was like, well, this one's bombed. This one hasn't, there was mafia. It was the south of Italy. And it was also 2009. So whatever I learned wasn't going to get me where I wanted to go, just given the world and the crisis and everything going on back then, the recession. So I decided, well, my brother actually said, Saleema, why don't you just use your skills, forget your degrees, and just use your translation, your language skills. And I went online to elance.com, won my first translation project to translate a website and made $60. And from there, $2,000. From there, that became a six-figure client, translate all these languages. And I was not I wasn't best in class at translating. I realized much later that my strength in that translation business was to get the client, sending the proposals, communicating, the client satisfaction, delivery quality, all those things. And yeah, we had a way to get projects and we had a way to deliver the projects. And there was no marketing, there was no SEO, there was no website or social media. It was just a business that was running. And I did not consider myself an entrepreneur. Again, I was thinking, okay, I need to get a job. I need to go to the World Bank. And so I finally sold that business, took on a job to work at these institutions, and very quickly realized not for me. And then I started to get out of those institutions and go back into entrepreneurship. So it's, to sum it up, it's kind of like, we sometimes think as kids or early in our lives, okay, our dream's to do this. And we work so hard. And then we're on this journey. For me, that journey was discovering the entrepreneur in me, but not totally aware that that's where I was going to land and stay. It was really, I need to go to the World Bank. I need to become an economist. I need to have a stable job. That's what my dad was like, go get a stable job. And that does not exist in today's world. So yeah, in a way, that time of my life really prepared me for my future. And yeah, I think that's so important for anyone, not even people that are actually becoming entrepreneurs, but to have those entrepreneurial skills is super important in today's market.
Absolutely. Very well said. What along the way got you ideating this business for ripple effect? Could you talk to us about the origins of the business? What inspired you to get this started?
Yeah. So the origins of Ripple Impact, it was actually, again, crisis. It was 2020. I had a terrible car accident and a concussion, and I was home and I couldn't go out. I was actually writing a book, which was published about 5 years ago called Innovation Starts with I. And at the time, I was still in the interview process, but my memory had been affected and I had to take a little pause on the book to recover my brain and just all my body injuries. And I was doing a lot of workshops and keynotes on design thinking and going out traveling in the world. And I couldn't do that anymore because of the concussion. Right after that happened, the pandemic started. This was, again, early 2020. My car accident was December 2019, and it was a pretty large whole issue settlement, whatever, whole legal thing that happened with the car accident, because I was not at fault, but it was a head-on collision. But that really, again, it was a big trauma, right? I had some PTSD coming out of that, and I just couldn't do the analytical work that I used to do with the World Bank, I couldn't do the level of research that I used to do. I just couldn't function the same way. And so I was just recovering, sitting in bed, and I was like, what am I going to do with my life? And I felt this intuition that it was time to reinvent myself, that this accident was kind of like when my house went on fire and the building burned down and I had to reinvent myself 10 years ago. That's a whole nother story that's in my book. But in 2020, I had to figure out, who am I going to be in the world? What am I going to do? Conferences are shutting down and getting canceled, and the world's completely shut down. And so it was during the pandemic, during the lockdown, I started experimenting. And I started to really do a little bit of research on, like, what do people want from me? What do they value in me? And so my assistant at the time, who was working on my personal brand and trying to help me with my book platform and all that stuff, I had her interview some of my friends and colleagues and ask them, what do you think Saleema is really good at? What's her superpower? What would you hire her for? Like, what would you pay her for? And it was funny. It wasn't what I had been doing. It wasn't design thinking and innovation strategy and all that stuff I was doing at the corporate level. It was personal brand building. It was marketing. It was positioning. It was LinkedIn. It was TEDx. It was like, how does she network and build relationships and, show up with confidence on stage and all these things. And it was like, that's not at all what I thought people valued in me. So it was, if you know the Johari window, think about the blind area. It was like that whole blind area that people saw me a certain way and I didn't see myself that way. So to sum it up, it was a combination of getting that insight and really looking at those blind areas. It was also experimenting. I was creating courses. I was talking to the market. I was just talking to people. A lot of people had a lot of time in the pandemic. And I just saw over the course of several years I had a different marketing business, a HubSpot reseller business before that. And I saw that the world was shifting more towards to trust, to the human side of it, and not like being a strong face is important, because if you can't be out there at conferences, your referrals are drying up. How do you really build that trust and authority? How do you really communicate that trust? And it came down to you could call it personal brand building, but I like to call it authority brand building, because it's really about, what do you have to offer to the world? What is your expertise, or what is your unique perspective, more than like lifestyle branding. And so we shifted towards that, and we started to help we basically did a crowdfunding campaign for my book in August 2020. This was, again, not about the money. It was really about a marketing campaign to grow my author platform. And I did a lot with the book interviews I was doing, I realized that there was a need in the market to help a lot of, actually it was like coaches, consultants, a lot of experts, a lot of solopreneurs. I was like, these folks don't have teams and they're trying to get themselves out in the world. They're trying to get their books out in the world. They were CEOs of one, right? They were like one person businesses. And we started to help that market. We started an accelerator program and started to become the team, helping them with business strategy, helping them with their marketing, helping them with their branding, building their assets, their keynotes, their speaker sheets, their media kits, their book covers, helping them launch their books. And that's where the business had originally started. It was a very different business. And it was actually iterations of that solopreneur. It became corporate executives at a point, and more seasoned experts. When I started OPM, that was my business. I went to OPM and I told Daz, we're helping corporate exiters plan their transitions out of corporate and build their portfolio career. That's how I started OPM. It wasn't about CEOs of mid-sized companies. I mean, we had a couple of small business CEOs, but it was a very different business. And so yeah, the origins of the business started back in 2020 in the pandemic. I would have to add, though, that there was a time of failure, since you want to hear the fuck ups. It was before OPM, where I really fucked up. Didn't know how to do zero. Well, I knew 0 to 1. I struggled, but was able to do 1 to 10. I broke somewhere along the lines of 10 to 50. It was probably around like employee number 30 something. Everything fell down in the business. We 5x'd our revenue, and we were in the early 7 figures at the time. And basically the business broke. And I didn't know, when we were making decisions about growth, I was like, yeah, let's just grow fast. I'm a visionary. And we're like, well, why don't we grow slower? And I was like, no, let's just go. There's demand. And everything broke. There was a whole crisis in the company. And I had to heal from burnout. It took 6 months to go into that situation, and it took years to recover from that. And not just financially and with all the culture and all the different issues that come along when you break because of fast growth. But it was the internal landscape, like my entire life. Like I was, I had a lot of health issues. I was not sleeping well. I was just a different person. Even when I started unit 1, I felt I was still recovering from that mess at the end of it, but still it was not easy. And so yeah, basically my business was in a better place, but still in a very not where it is today. And it's completely turned around. So I almost look at it, to be very fair and honest, it's like a different business. OPM transformed me and it transformed my business in so many ways because it transformed my thinking. And so I gave you the origins, but I also gave you the crisis and a bit of the transformation. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that. In what way did OPM help with the transformation? Could you share some of your takeaways?
Yeah. So how did OPM transform me? I look at it through the lens of the different ways that we grow capital, right? So there's social, emotional, intellectual, and financial. So I would start with emotionally, actually. OPM, I kept hearing from alumni that were raving fans. Oh, OPM is going to change your life personally and not just in your business. And I was like, how? Like, I'm learning from professors, I'm learning frameworks. Like, how is this? I'm studying cases. How is this going to change me personally? And I realized that, I mean, it's the way they design the program, right? Because there's a little bit of personal development, some of the coaching, but more so than anything, it was going through the journey and changing my thinking. It was learning a lot from my peers and connecting with them personally in their journeys. I learned so much from my peer experiences that actually inspired me, that influenced me. And I also joined EO, which was very important as part of this journey. That was also very highly transformative, very involved in entrepreneurs organization. And that was thanks to Sudhakar, thanks to some of the alumni and some of my peers at OPM that said, Saleema, just join EO. And I said, oh, I don't have time. I'm going to do it after Harvard. They're like, no, no, no. Sudhakar was like, just do it now. And I joined EO and it started to change my life personally. And it gave me more of what OPM wasn't giving me, was that local community and a forum experience, which also, I mean, thanks to OPM, I became an EO member, but it was really that forum experience, which is really group therapy for founders, is what some people call it, because you actually have a space to talk about your deepest stuff, your personal, your family, and your business. And I'd say that EO has been really, really transformative for me. And then to some extent, within OPM, I have a circle of, 5 to 10 people I stay in touch with regularly. And they also have been very helpful to me personally. And so I think it's really much a pick your own adventure, your own journey within OPM. And I would say that that emotional journey is very important as an entrepreneur. A lot of people think top line, business, business, but really the personal growth does lead to business growth. I actually talk a little bit about this in my book, but essentially that is true. And that's why you see a lot of entrepreneurs working on mindset, working on manifestation, working on, just really trying to be their best selves personally, health wise, emotionally, mindset, all of it, because that impacts how we make decisions in our business. So that's the emotional. Socially, I learned a lot about myself. Also, sometimes, and this, a lot of other people felt this way at OPM, is sometimes felt kind of small, where it was like, oh, wow, there's all these incredible entrepreneurs. And I had never been in a community that was full of people that were wired this way, right? They're very successful, very accomplished. But sometimes it can feel to some people intimidating. And I had to really work on some of those insecurities, work on some of that stuff that was happening, the lack of confidence. I hadn't felt that way in a long time, but it triggered me in ways that I was like, wow, I need to work on some of this stuff. And it's really fascinating to see how we build confidence in OPM. This is something I learned actually from some alumni, that they built confidence and that there's other people just like us that think like us and have experienced a lot of, like you said, not just the success, but the fuck ups. And we've been in all kinds of places, so we understand each other. So it's really feeling heard, feeling understood, and really having a social network of people that you can count on. It really does feel like a family. You've got the good things, you've also got some of the dysfunctional things. Like, it's not perfect, right? And you have to pick and choose, like, what do you want from your experience? And for me, it was really, who's my circle of 5? Who are the people that I really want to stay in touch with? I also noticed socially that the people that I would attract were very different from unit 1 to unit 2. And then a little bit but not too much from unit 2 to unit 3. I think the biggest transformation was from unit 1 to unit 2 and then just after unit 2. But yeah, the people that I attracted in unit 1, most of them I didn't really talk to much after that. Like we were just cool, but like we were just different energy and just different dynamics, just different wavelengths, nothing against them. But I noticed that my relationships in unit 2 were the ones I mostly stayed with. And then some of them came from unit 1, but it was just interesting that I attracted and made friends with people in unit 2 that I had never talked to in unit 1. So that was fascinating socially. Intellectually, of course, I don't need to talk much about that, but intellectually, I grew a lot. Of course, I learned a lot from the professors and learned even more from my classmates and how they applied the stuff we're learning in the classroom because the application is really hard. For me, at least, it's like you learn these things, you have all these ideas, and you come back, you're like, how the hell am I going to implement this? And so I've had to, yes, hire some certain consultants and experts to help me with implementation because I realized it's some of the stuff is hard. But then learning from my classmates who already were implementing some of these AI strategies, some of these different business structures and models, it was like, wow, you can learn a lot. And so that, and then of course, if you work on socially, emotionally, and intellectually, then financially, you benefit as well. So that was obvious. And my business definitely grew and became more profitable, especially between unit 2 and unit 3.
Great, thank you. What's one belief that you've changed your mind about over the last decade?
Yeah, I would say one belief. I used to see things in black and white. I used to say it has to be this way or this way. And I would say that that change in my belief changed drastically when I was at OPM because OPM taught me to look more at the gray space. And there's actually someone else, Pierce Cacalda, who influenced my thinking in this as well, who does a lot of work in spiritual mindfulness in that area. But anyways, it was really about looking at the gray space. That's where the creativity is. That's where we can actually do different things. And before OPM, I used to think black and white, like this had to be this way or this way. And OPM really helped me to embrace the space, the beautiful big gray space in between black and white. And a lot of professors as well, Francis Frey does, some of them, Jeff Pulzer, they really helped me understand and see what's the potentials and the possibilities in that gray space. And that's where innovation really happens. And that's where I started to make a lot of changes in my business. That's where I started to make a lot of changes in myself. And so yeah, it's that how do we identify and play and stay and embrace in that gray space, and just see things differently and expand our minds. And that's something I have to thank OPM for.
Right. If you could think of a book that has influenced the way that you think, what would that book be?
Yeah, I would say that I really like Give and Take by Adam Grant. That one is one of my I mean, I have lots of books that I love reading, but that one really started to help me think about how I want to show up in communities, with people, socially, with myself. And I've always identified myself as a giver in certain ways, but I also see that sometimes as entrepreneurs we can switch into being a taker. And I had to really think about and does really influence my thinking on this as well is how do we implement that in our businesses in terms of customer experience and giving an incredible experience to our wow experience to our customers. That give and take concept really stuck with me because I always think about like, hey, how can I be a giver and a taker at the same time? You know, Daz talks about how do you create, communicate, deliver, and extract value at the same time. And for me, yeah, that book really influenced me, although I would say that before OPM, I thought you either are a giver or you're a taker, and it's hard to do both, and Daz really helped me take that book and implement that personally and in my business. How do we really be a giver and a taker? And everyone wins at the same time.
Did Das recommend that book for you?
No, I read the book well before OPM, but I just made this connection now because I think that we always think about how do you be a go-giver, but it was OPM that as soon as I got to unit 1 and he started talking about how do you extract value, I didn't really think about that very much. I was always thinking about how do you give value? How do you create value? But not so much how do you also build a structure or a platform in a way where you can extract value at the same time. So, it took me a while to understand and implement that, but learning from my classmates who have ecosystem businesses, lots of portfolios, I learned how they were able to do that with their businesses. Yeah.
Salima, in closing, if you could go back to the start of your career and talk to yourself, what advice would you give your younger version now?
Don't overthink things. I think that not too much, but a lot of education made me very analytical. It made me think twice about taking decisions. Made me decrease my confidence, I would say, by thinking too much, seeking validation, trying to, I actually have some of my best ideas is when I just go after them. I'm spontaneous. I don't think so hard. And I tend to overthink a lot. I still do a lot personally and in the business because we build a certain amount of trauma, we build a certain amount of jadedness, right? When we fail or hurt, that pain is there. It doesn't really go away even if we work on it. And so yeah, just don't overthink things and just go with the flow. Use a combination of intuition and data, but also listen to your gut. And I think that's something that whenever I did listen to my gut and of course validate, that's when I've had my biggest successes.
Very well said. Thank you. Going with your gut is what makes entrepreneurs stand out. I think if we go for social validation, then in some way that thinking would get merged with what the society thinks already of that particular problem statement. So very well said. Thank you very much, Salima.
You're
Appreciate your
welcome.
time. And yeah, look forward to being in touch.
Thank you so much, Sohan.